Hello, and welcome to Coach's Corner. I'm your host, Matt Bisaccio. Today, we're going to be joined by Assabet Valley's girls basketball coach, Frank Ferreer. Coach, thank you very much for taking a couple of moments out of your day to spend with us. Hopefully, by the end of the interview, the community will have a better understanding of who you are and who you are as a coach.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I hope, in fact, at the end of it, the community's happy to know me a little better.
Absolutely. We're going to start off. Can you just kind of explain to us about your playing history and who you learned the game from and where you started off with?
Oh, boy, okay. I guess I've been around for a long time. I've actually been coaching high school basketball. I started with boys 27 years ago. I actually took some time off when my own son and daughter were growing up, so there's a kind of a lapse there. But my family, I grew up right outside of Boston in Somerville, and I can tell you from the time I was a kid, my dream was to play high school basketball for my city and to attend high school games. And boy, back then, you know, a long time ago, but basketball was, you didn't get to the gym by 5 o'clock, you weren't getting in because there were literally 1,500 people or more in the gymnasium. So it was in my blood. My brothers coached, and basically every single weekend was all devoted to whether coaching or playing. So it was just something that for the time I can remember growing up that I wanted to be part of, and I wanted to play, and I wanted to coach. So it was, to me, it was an easy transition that went along with it.
Now, that competition that you're talking about, do you think that helped you along the way to become a better player?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think any sport gives you an opportunity. When you compete, I truly do believe it helps you throughout your life. So to me, in fact, if anything, I probably put too much pressure as when I was younger on myself, whether it be playing or coaching, and probably it was a little, in some cases, even to my own son when he played, high school basketball. But I absolutely think that the competition for people who really are true athletes, there's nothing better than that. There really is nothing that can set you up, as I said, better in anything you do in life. So it was great to grow up in that environment.
Now, what about your coaching start? Where did you start coaching?
Oh boy, the first place I actually I coached for just a year in a middle school in Somerville, just as a middle school team. It was just kind of off the cuff type of thing. And then my first coaching job, it was the next year. I went to a school called Newton Catholic High School, which then became Trinity Catholic, which is right off the Mass Pike. Today, in fact, it's some type of international school, but that was my first, and it was boys. And I coached there for about 6 years. Difficult part back then is that you actually had to win 60% of your games to qualify. So we had a couple of years that we finished 500, which today would have been fine, but back then it didn't cut it. But it was good. It was a nice little. It was called the Catholic Suburban League. It was a great opportunity to kind of get yourself started, and it really, I think it was a great learning experience. I found out what it was like to coach some few, I thought, pretty good players, and also how to deal with some kids that truly might have been pretty good players, but they wanted to test whether you were going to be the kind of coach to push them or not.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, you were saying that you worked with boys at first, now you work with girls. Can you explain to the audience about what the difference may be between coaching each individual gender?
Yeah, I think a lot of high school boys coaches would disagree with me on this, but I went in the mid-1990s. I coached until about 84, somewhere around there. I took like 10 years off, and then I decided I wanted to get back into it. I was involved in that 10 years in building an AAU program, which honestly at that time was the largest in the state of Massachusetts, but it was all boys again. It was called CMAC. I think it might even still be around. I have nothing to do with it at this point, but it was this huge program. But then I decided I wanted to get back in. I happened to see that, or someone told me that Air High School had a girls basketball position open, so I applied. And honestly, thought I was a little cocky. I said, well, I coached boys all these years. Girls was going to be really easy.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you, that was a wake-up call, because what I would say, if you coach girls, you have to coach. I mean, I can go through, I think any one coach can do X and O's. I don't think that's a big deal about coaching. I really don't. But you can do all the X and O's you want with girls, And if you think that they're just going to execute that because you're drawing something up, that's not happening. There are a whole bunch of basic assumptions you can't make. So to me, if you enjoy coaching, I don't think there's anything better, because there's a great challenge of coaching girls. But I think there's a great reward by doing so when you feel like you're being somewhat successful. So I personally believe that coaching girls, you got to do a lot more coaching.
Sure, so it becomes more of a managing personalities and really getting to know the person with the girls as opposed to the boys, where it can be a little bit more, say, lax, and it's really more about the X's and O's, like you'd say.
Yeah, I would absolutely say that to some extent, no doubt about it. And also just to the extent of, believe it or not, even in the high school level, you know, you have a whole bunch of girls that, you know, have trouble, you know, just making layups, or just understanding, you know, you understand or to draw up a play, and guess what? They'll go exactly where you tell them. But guess what? If there was some place that might have been a better place to go, but that wasn't drawn up, no, that ain't happening. So it's not as intuitive for a lot of girls as it is for a lot of guys. So a lot of guys just kind of play, you know, growing up, and you just kind of fool around, play pickup ball. Not so much with the average girl. You know, more intense girls, more serious, yes, but not on average.
Sure. What about your particular coaching style? What would you say is your particular coaching style?
What I love to do coaching is I like to push the tempo. I like to create, and I've said this many times to people, is I want to create chaos. I want it to be, I don't want to say ugly, but I want it to be so that there's just, you know, just constant movement on the court. And if we can do that, we have a chance. Because most of the times I've coached girls, I haven't coached, I haven't had a lot of size most of the time. And truthfully, fortunately I've had, you know, some pretty good guards, but really not a whole bunch of all-around really good players. I've had athletes, but not basketball players. So for us to have any success, we have to be able to create, you know, turnovers from the other team, and we have to be able to run the court, and we have to be able to make at times it look very ugly. But that's our style. Our style is, you know, up-tempo, but it's easy to say that. It's another thing to actually go and do that on the court. But that's what we attempt to do. And if we don't succeed in doing that, we struggle. So that's got to be what we have to do.
Now, being at a school like Aspet Valley, it's a vocational school. In regards to recruiting, is there ever an advantage coming from a vocational school that may have a little bit more to offer than a regular public school? Well,
the school itself, I truly do believe is that it has a lot to offer here at Aspet. It really does. You know, you look at the current situation within you know, college graduates, and you find so many that can't find jobs. You come here to Aspet, you got an opportunity, you know, contrary to some people's belief, you know, to go on to college, and you also have an opportunity to get a background in some of these shops, you know, pretty good business background or shop background, you know, whatever the vocation is. So to me, it's an advantage. And it's starting to draw more girls. You know, 10, 12 years ago, it was a higher percentage of boys, but today, I think the mix here at Aspet, I don't know exactly the number, but it seems to be much, much more 50-50 or somewhere close to it. So it's kind of nice because you're drawing, you know, more females, and you're drawing females that, you know, have backgrounds in playing sports as opposed to 15 years ago.
All right. And we're going to end you on a little bit of an easy question here. Now, you're known in the area as being the coach on the sidelines that likes to chew a lollipop. Now, where did that come from?
The lollipop, and honestly, some people think I'm just doing it for show. It's not. You know, years back ago, I got a little too fired up. I really did, and I realized I had to take a step back. So I said, well, the best way to keep myself, you know, quiet was to start. And by the way, they have to be Tootsie Pops. If they're not Tootsie Pops, I don't do them.
Okay.
All right. And believe it or not, there's also a color scheme.
Okay.
So I use certain lollipops on certain games. So if I think I'm going to be in a game that's kind of laid back, it's going to be like a brown or a purple. If I'm in a game that's going to be intense, it's going to be red. If it's real intense, it might be a raspberry. So I know that sounds really weird, but it really was done so I kind of take a step back and relax, because it does. I kind of enjoy it, and it's become a tradition that I've had now for, oh my God, it's got to be the last 20 years of coaching.
That's great. Well, thank you very much. Again, we appreciate the time that you've given us today.
Thank you.
That's going to do it for us on Coach's Corner. We'll see you next time.